Hey, it's Mike Camber with FlipNerd.com. Welcome back for another exciting VIP interview where I interview successful real estate investing experts and entrepreneurs in our industry to help you learn and grow. Today, I'm joined by Brian Meidam. He's a Milwaukee-based real estate investor that bought his first property over 10 years ago and has gone on to do a lot of deals. Like many veteran real estate investors, he has multiple exit strategies by wholesaling, rehabbing, keeping rentals, and a number of other things. But Brian has become a pro at rehabbing and reselling, which is important in this market. We've kind of converted to a seller's market here. And so today he's going to share with us how to rehab and price properties to maximize profits. Before we get started with Brian, though, let's take a moment to recognize our featured sponsors. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days. Rates start as low as 9%. We'd also like to thank National Real Estate Insurance Group, the nation's leading provider of insurance to the residential real estate investor market. From individual properties to large-scale investors, National Real Estate Insurance Group is ready to serve you. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Hey, Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So you're up in Milwaukee. You're kind of at hopefully the tail end of your winter, I assume.
Well, let's hope so. We're hitting 50 degrees today. It's exciting, the high of the year.
I grew up in the Midwest. That's shorts weather, right? You get up to 50.
Yeah,
and
it is.
Get out the
flip-flops.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for joining us today. So before we get started about talking about rehabbing and, a lot of veteran real estate investors have a couple of strategies based on whether it's a rental or a retail sale, and then usually pull a couple of levers with kind of price and quality to sell your houses quickly. So it's going to be a good topic to talk about. But before we get started, why don't you tell us your background and how you got into real estate investing and a little bit more about you?
Sure. Thanks. Well, I guess to start out, I got into the business on a part-time basis back in 2004. At that time, I guess prior to that, I went to college, got a finance degree, and was working for an investment firm as a bond trader and an analyst. Did that from 2001 to 2007, and then started buying real estate, buying some rentals on the side in 2004, and left the job in, I think it was July of 2007. And which some people are like, oh, you're crazy. That timing was awful.
Yeah.
But we can get back to that later. It ended up being perfect for me with the amount of short sales that I was doing. But had the support of my wife, and we basically what we did is we saved up my income, lived off of less than her income, which gave us a lot of room, so I didn't have to come out of the gates being a motivated buyer and make dumb decisions. So. With her support, it was, she kind of gave me that nudge because I kind of had the golden handcuffs where I was working at. And but it was a great thing, So what I was doing at my job at the time is I would, take vacations, and I would go home and, take a week's vacation, and I'd do real estate full time for that week to see if I liked it and it fit my personality. Yeah. So I worked on a trading desk, and I wasn't, am I going to like this, being self-employed on my own? It ended up working out great, ended up buying some properties, getting some good deals. And eventually in 2007, I made the leap to unemployable.
Yeah, that's. I came in 2008, so a little bit after you, but it was the same thing. People are like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you leaving your job? Like, it just didn't make sense to a lot of people. And now some of those people are like, well, how do I do that?
Exactly.
So, hey, maybe you could take a minute and talk about. A lot of people are in that situation. Like, you and I left corporate America behind, and a lot of people do. But I'd say the majority of people fear that kind of jump, of jumping off. And it sounds like you kind of eased into it. Is that, aside from kind of easing into it like that and trying it a little bit, what kind of advice would you give to people to maybe make that leap to not necessarily work for the man anymore?
Sure, that's a great question. And I think, I would say my biggest piece of advice would be if you can't do this business on a part-time basis, you will never, ever be able to do it on a full-time basis. So there's no reason why you have to quit cold turkey the job and then go out and do real estate. For some people, maybe their personalities, that's what they have to do, because if they have that a paycheck every day, it's not enough of an incentive to motivate themselves. But if you've got some discipline, and you've got to have discipline when you're self-employed, because if you want to sleep in until noon and no one's telling you can't,
right.
Your bills are going to add up pretty quick if you do that. This business can be done on a part-time basis. It does not need to be done on a full-time basis. So the other part is, if you've got a spouse or significant other, I think, you want that support of that other person. Otherwise, it would have been stressful if my wife Shana wasn't on board. Thankfully she was, and it worked out great.
Not everybody's in that situation, and I wasn't necessarily in the situation when I started, but in the corporate world, somebody that I looked up to told me one time, save a year of your income as fast as you can. And it was basically, the thought was, you'll take more risks. You're not worried about eating tomorrow necessarily, or paying the bills next week. It's like you just become a different person if you have that entrepreneurial spirit. Or even if you're in corporate America, you're more likely to stick your head up and go for the gold, because I've got a safety net if I need it. So.
Right. In the reality is, in the corporate world, there is not much of a safety net anymore.
Right, absolutely.
I've got more of a safety net being self-employed that someone does working in the corporate world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of people don't understand that, but it takes, being self-employed isn't easy either. Some people are like, oh, it's all rosy. Well, they're lying to you. I mean, there's days where in this business, everything's going wrong, contractor issues, tenant issues. But you take the good with the bad, and there's definitely more good with being self-employed.
Absolutely.
And it's there is no top. You can just keep going.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. So so tell us your background about how I know you wholesale and you keep some houses as rentals. You have a number of different exit strategies you follow, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about rehabbing. But kind of talk about your transition. Did you start off by primarily wholesaling, or did you keep a couple of rentals while you had your job, or kind of talk about how you got to a point to where you had multiple exit strategies?
Sure. Well, I started building up a small rental portfolio while I still had a job.
Okay.
Because I wanted to be able to be financeable. And not have any issues there. Hindsight being 2020, I wish I didn't have those rentals, because obviously, we all know what happened in the market after that. But it's just a good thing I bought them where, they cash flowed and it wasn't an equity speculation play.
Right.
Because that all evaporated very, very quickly after the market turned down. So I was building up a small rental portfolio. I also had a whole bunch of short sales in the pipeline. And that really helped the business a lot, because in 07, when I quit, December of 07, I had a six-figure month just wholesaling the short sales, and that was just a big confidence booster and a shot in the arm.
Absolutely.
To keep going. So we still do short sales today. We do a lot of them. We're pretty good at them. But that's for people starting out, is going into a short sale niche the right business decision? Probably not. Because we really have to build a big pipeline of short sales, and you have to really know what you're doing to be effective at it. Otherwise, you're just going to spin your wheels and you're going to pull your hair out. So I would say for people that are getting short sale leads, if it's not something that you're going to focus on and build a business on, refer those leads out to other people. I'm not just saying that because I do short sales. But refer them out to people where that's their business model. It's a dead lead for you. Work out an arrangement where you can get paid on that referral if they close on it, and move on to the next deal.
Yeah, I can say that's what we've done. I mean, my wife, for the majority of the time we've been in business, was an agent, and we never worked a single short sale. We just knew it was a beating, and it wasn't our area of expertise and not the best use of our time. So we always just referred those out to somebody else that could, try to work them on our behalf. And very rarely did we ever end up buying them, but maybe got a referral for, the listing agent that sold it or something like that. So but you could probably
as I was leaving the in the process of leaving the job, the short sales were really hitting. I was doing some direct mail that was hitting. I was getting leads, and I was selling stuff just as fast as I could get it. And that was kind of as the market was starting to come down a bit. And then I started getting, so I would just basically watch and see what those people were doing with those properties. Were they keeping them as rentals? How were they rehabbing them? The stuff that was more retail, what were they doing with them? How were they selling them? What were they doing to them? What would I do differently? what would I copy that they did, and just kind of followed along behind the scenes to see what they did. Exactly.
It's funny that you say that. I mean, most people don't do that, right? They just think they kind of try to figure it out on their own. They think they know. They saw something on HGTV and whatever it might be, right? I mean, a lot of people get into it.
Well, that's reality TV. Come on, Mike.
Yeah. Surreal. But it's funny that you say that, because I would say, and I'm not saying that I was that different. I just kind of figured it out, and we got better as time went by. But now that I have done a lot of deals, know a lot of people, there aren't very many real estate investors that I know that if somebody asked them, "Do you mind if I just watch you while you rehab this house and ask you a couple questions?" Like, there aren't very many that would say no, unless they did,
right.
Unless you were a schmuck and they just didn't really want to be around you. But I think most people, especially rehabbers, they get some pride in showing people
right.
how successful they are at doing things, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
exactly.
More people should ask, other people that they know they're in the business. I've had people that can I just get the lockbox code to your house and go in a couple times? I'll call you before I go. And I'm like, yeah, I'm cool with that. Don't step on any nails or anything, but
right.
you always have to worry about that part. But that's interesting. Yeah. So at what point, the whole thing about short sales being a bit of a beatdown for a new person, you could really say that for rehabs as well, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't, I mean, the key is, well, I guess if we back up, I think the problem where a lot of new people get beat up doing rehabs is they don't do their own due diligence,
yeah.
right? I mean, they trust the realtor on the comps. Nothing against realtors, but they're in a sales role,
right?
Right. So they trust the realtor for the comps. And that's as far as purchasing and reselling. And so they run their formula. I generally buy at 65% of ARV less repair costs. So, a new person may come in and say, okay, this is a 150 ARV at 65% less repairs of 40. And now, where that number comes out at isn't exactly where they need to buy it at. So now they say, well, the ARV is not really 150, it's 160. And I've never done this before, but I can fix it cheaper than 35. I can fix it for 20.
Right.
And so they're trying to sell themselves their own deal.
Yeah.
And it doesn't end up well.
Right. Right.
So it's and now it's the realtor's fault, and the contractor ripped them off, and so it's just you can't go into rehabbing loosey-goosey. You've got to do your own due diligence and really know your repair costs. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up to fail.
And a lot of that, like you said, it just comes down to experience. I mean, I know the first few houses I rehabbed, I went there all the time. I'm like personally going to pick out fixtures and stuff like that. I mean, I don't do any of that now, nor would I. But you just tend to let it soak up all your time, and as a real estate investor, your time's better spent finding that next deal, right?
Exactly, negotiating, not doing the clean out or dealing with that stuff. It's negotiating deals and marketing.
Yeah, yeah. So talk about do you remember your first rehab?
I do.
Yeah. Any drama with that one, or?
I've yet, knock on wood here, I've not lost money on a deal yet. However, this first deal, if we had to account for my time, I lost money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did pretty much everything wrong. I bought this duplex from a guy that I'd worked with. He was relocating to New York City and needed to sell it. So I paid way too much for it. I did all the work myself, and I'm not a contractor type person. So you know what that means, right? It didn't look very good, and it took 5 times as long as it should have, right?
Yep.
I think on the closing statements, I ended up making about $1,000. But if you count for my time, I lost my shirt.
Yeah.
But it was I learned a lot. I learned what not to do, what to do different next time. And for a lot of people starting out, if you break even on your first deal, it's a win, because a lot of people lose their shirt. I'm not saying I'm proud I made $1,000, but that was the first deal.
You appreciate the lesson, though.
Right.
Yeah.
In relative, it was a relatively cheap lesson to learn.
Yeah. So
but the key is learning from it.
So how did you evolve into like rehabbing more over time? I mean, you learned from that experience, and you said, "Here's what I'm going to do differently next time." And how did you kind of evolve to where you're confident and comfortable doing rehabs, just probably as comfortable as anything else you do?
Sure, I just immersed myself in education, but there's a fine line between getting educated and staying educated and not do anything, like a lot of people do, and getting educated and then to go out there and taking action. And for me, I was, I left my job. I had to, failure was not an option.
Yep.
I needed to figure this business out and do it.
Yeah.
And so, I educated myself, immersed myself. I wish I had a mentor when I started out. I did not, because I think my learning curve would have been drastically faster than it was, even though I did excel fairly quickly, but it could have been faster, and with us, I could have learned from their mistakes instead of my own.
Yeah.
But it was just going out there and doing it. And part of it was a lot of stuff I was wholesaling. I started filling up my buyers. So, these deals that came through that were retail type deals, I started filling these guys up. Well, okay, I'll just take this one and rehab it myself. And I figured it out eventually.
Yeah. Or you see somebody that you wholesale to, and somehow you hear that they did better than you thought they would do on it. And you're like, maybe I'll have some money on the table, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And, I would say at that point, my wholesale margins have come down a little bit, but, at that point, I think I was probably averaging, around 15 grand a wholesale deal, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
But I was seeing what they were making, rehabbing them, and I was like, well, I got to figure this out.
Yeah.
So I just, jumped in education-wise and then figured it out from there.
Especially when you start to realize that it's not necessarily, I don't know if this is the case for you, that I'm going to do just as many deals and I'm going to make twice as much money necessarily, which doesn't always work out that way. But
rarely ever, I think.
But when you start to realize, like, wow, maybe I could do half as many deals and make the same amount of money. There's something to be said for not having to chase, because usually the hardest part of this business is generally finding the deals, right? So when you start to kind of put that math together, and you're like, well, there's a way for me to kind of squeeze more juice out of this fruit, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think you made a good point about, a lot of people like, I want to do, 100 deals this year. Like for me, I don't want to do 100 deals.
Yeah.
I want to have a life.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be stressed out. And I want to be, I've got 3 little kids. I want to be able to do stuff with them and be around.
Yep.
So to me, if I think last year on my own, I think I did right about 25 deals.
Okay.
But they were 25 pretty good deals.
Yeah.
And then I've got joint ventures, and I do some hard money lending and things on the side as well. So, to try and leverage myself. But doing the high volume stuff that's not what I want to do, because I think it's just hard to be sustainable. Plus, like I don't have crews on payroll. I've just got everyone subbed out. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the guys that do, they always have to be chasing deals because they've got to keep feeding the machine.
Right.
Right. And so, I got to keep my guys busy. So, instead of making 30 grand on this deal, I'll take 15. Well, if you have a couple things that happen on your deal, your 15 evaporates fairly quickly.
Right. Yeah, I can relate to that. I understand. It's interesting how we're going into this market now. I don't know if you feel the same way in Milwaukee, but that it feels similar. Like we're, I didn't start until 2008, but from what I know of the market just before I got in 2005, 6, it feels like we might be kind of getting back to that point a little bit. So it's interesting how, I've learned a lot from people that were investing for several years before me, because it's almost like they lived through the Depression, and if they survived, then they're scarred. Like they've learned some lessons about keep it lean and mean, don't get bloated with a bunch of overhead and stuff like that. And so I think from your standpoint, it's wise to not do that. And it's something that my overhead's probably higher than it should be, or it has been for a while. But I think about it a lot. Like, how do we, balance between not sacrificing more opportunity, but staying lean and mean, so that when the market shifts, because it will, you're kind of prepared to deal with that.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I keep, I think I worked out of my basement for 2 years before I had an office, and now I've moved offices once since then. But our overhead's still really low. I have one assistant that works for me about 35 hours a week, and my overhead is very, very low.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about with rehabbing. So talk about how, you probably, like most real estate investors, and this is how I was, you kind of just think, hey, I'm going to create the blueprint for every rehab. And initially for me, it was like they're all going to kind of be the same. And what ended up happening was I'm under rehabbing higher dollar houses. I'm over rehabbing rentals or lower grade houses. And you learn pretty quickly that just doesn't work. Doesn't make sense. And so kind of talk about how you went through that process of learning different levels of rehab, and maybe even talk specifically about, what your criteria are.
Sure. Well, I guess to start out with what my criteria is, 3-bedroom or larger single-family houses with a basement. So basements are common in my market. If you don't have it, it's not normal. And they're hard to sell if you don't have a basement.
Okay.
So, or a 2-bedroom where you can pop the top and go up.
Okay.
Got to have a garage or room to build one, and a decent floor plan, or if it's a goofy floor plan, one that you can change and make work.
Okay.
So that's the criteria. No busy streets. Not next to commercial. And my market is, it's not a sexy market. It's the first-time home buyer market. So in my market, that means, from 120 to kind of 250.
Okay.
And people are like, well, why don't you do high-end? You can do high-end. Well, I can, but, the thing always in the back of my mind is those buyers are a lot pickier.
Yeah.
If you don't give them exactly what they want, they'll just go build it.
Right.
The first-time home buyer market, those people are always coming into the market, and you give them, we give them a really nice product, whether we're doing the $120,000 house or the $200,000 house is getting granite countertops, stainless steel appliance package. Stainless steel appliance package cost me $1,800 to $2,200. So that versus going, to all white or all black appliances, the cost premium for that is not much,
right.
And there's a big perceived value for that.
Sure, absolutely.
Same thing with granite. It costs me more, but it doesn't cost me a lot more.
Right. Yeah. So talk about your and so do you have different levels, like almost packages of what you do based on price point? Like if you're at the lower end of your range versus the higher end, or is it pretty much identical?
It's pretty much identical. There isn't. Maybe I'll do more, some different color schemes in the house. Mm-hmm. I'll add some crown molding, some chair rails in the master bedroom. But as far as, fixtures, we're buying the 2-pack from Lowe's for $20,
Okay.
The brushed nickel.
Yeah.
So it's, there isn't a ton of variation. Just because it really doesn't need to be. The people at 120,000, I'm providing them a better house than my competition is.
Right.
And slightly at a slightly cheaper price, and same thing on the higher end. Sometimes on the higher end, though, depending on the neighborhood, I can push that depending on the inventory available.
Yeah. You mentioned yours are nicer than the competition. Talk a little bit about, evaluating the competition and how you look at it. I mean, I know you and I both are big believers that all that matters is as local as you can get. So,
right.
What if the house across the street is for sale, that's probably your biggest competitor. And let me just talk about how you kind of evaluate that and how you kind of stay fresh over time.
Sure. Well, I'm looking, when I go to evaluate a house, I'm looking ideally 3 months and a 3-block radius of the house. If I can't get the comps I need there, I'll expand out. But what I want to do is, I'm looking at solds because that's where the market recently was.
Right.
And I'm not just looking at solds, I'm also looking at actives because that's what my current competition is. So
I do the same thing, but very few people say that because that's, we're cut from the same cloth, my friend.
Sure.
But yeah, so it's important because if somebody's looking at houses right now, like who are you competing with right now?
Right.
Yep.
And that also determines in my market whether we have to put a rec room in the basement. Does my competition have it? If the actives and most of the actives in the solds have it, and they're at this price point, and I need to be at that price point, that rec room with a full bathroom is going to cost me X. Well, does that make sense to do, or do I price it cheaper Then if I do that, will it stay on the market longer because I don't have that extra bathroom? Right. So it's all those things I'm paying attention to, and that's looking at the comps on MLS, not on Zillow or Trulia or any of the other sites. I just look at the MLS because that's kind of the premier source, at least in my mind.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And how about different grades for like rentals and things like that?
Sure.
Do you have kind of a set standard kind of package of how you just for the folks listening? I mean, maybe you could talk a little bit about something that you and I kind of take for granted, is that operationally you need to be as consistent as possible from house to house to house. Otherwise, you're the one who's out picking out fixtures and stuff yet again, right? So.
Right. So all of my rentals are all painted the same color on the inside.
Yeah.
So I can call the supply house and tell them, I need 2 5-gallons of this, and the contractor goes and picks it up and paints the place. Yeah. So as far as the fixtures go, I'm not buying the plastic cheap faucets. I'm buying decent $80 fixtures because they're going to last, because I know the tenants are going to abuse them.
Right.
So I want them to last, and I don't want that phone call. I guess the other things I'm looking at is what can I take out of the house to avoid those tenant phone calls. So a lot of times if I buy it and it has ceiling fans in it, we don't have a crazy hot climate. So I'm pulling those things out and just putting light fixtures in because they're going to break. And I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. What else do you take out?
I will sometimes, this has backfired a little bit. So our water bills have gotten outrageous, and on a duplex, the owner pays the water bill, and if the tenant doesn't pay it, that goes on my tax bill, so it does not attach to the tenant. So sometimes what I was finding in the duplexes, they're running a laundromat out of the basement, which sometimes can take a little bit of time to catch, and it costs money. So what I was doing is in the basements at the laundry bin, basically disconnecting that and not allowing hookups. I still have some of them that way, but
just put coin laundry in there.
Yeah, I could do that. I could do that. So some of the tenants, raise a stink about that. I didn't do it to any existing, but just to the new ones moving in. Some were like, "Oh, we're not going to rent it unless we can, put a washer and dryer in." So okay, fine, we'll hook it back up. Yeah. So I didn't stand firm on that. So that backfired a little bit on me. When we're buying a place, we're always generally changing out wax rings and toilets. As far as I don't put carpeting in any more of my rental properties. Okay. What I like putting is a product called Allure, Allure. It's at Home Depot, it seems to be very tenant proof.
Yeah.
It's basically a floating vinyl floor.
Okay.
But looks like hardwood.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think Lowe's carries something similar. But Allures worked very well. And then if there's hardwoods, we'll always refinish the hardwood floors and keep those.
Yeah.
I was spending way too much money on carpet for tenants.
Yeah.
Just because it would get destroyed.
Yeah, we found that in some instances when we rehab rentals, we spend more money on the materials than we would in a rehab. Just because we know it's not that we were trying to put something out that wasn't durable in our rehab. We try to put out a good product, but it's like something that's just like extra durable. Like we're going to go take it a step above because in the long term, like we used this carpet that was called like Houdini or something. Like literally I saw this demo. People like dumped like blue ink on it and you just couldn't see it. It's like, I still don't know how it worked, but it had something to do with like the reflection of the light. And so it was more expensive, but it was like, wow, that's going to last probably twice as long as regular carpet. So it was worth a little bit more.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, do you, in terms of your contractors and how you work, from a rehab standpoint, do you have kind of a, not necessarily a SKU list, but I mean, do your contractors know, you give them the flexibility to say, the types of lights that we use or the types of fans that we use or the types of appliances? Are you ordering each of those things yourself or do you have kind of a set list and people just know what your expectations are?
The way I do it on the rehabs is I'll have them give me a count list. So I need, they'll say I need X number of 3-bulb light fixtures, X number of 2-bulb light fixtures. Here's the dimensions for the pre-hung doors. Kind of the full material list.
Yeah.
This is how much Durock, drywall, whatever. And then I'll call, call the box store with the SKUs and order it through the contractor desk, and they'll deliver it.
Okay.
and that way, I don't have to. The contractor doesn't have to worry about paying for it, and I know exactly what I'm getting. They sign off on it and basically do a check that it's all there when it gets delivered.
Yeah.
And then from that point forward, I give the contractor gift cards.
Okay.
And kind of my rule with the contractors is they're only allowed to bill me for stuff that's staying in the property. So when I tell them that up front in the contract, so, because I've got to draw the line somewhere. Otherwise, I get charged for, a spray gun and Fritos and 5-hour energy and everything else. And it on its own, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it can add up, a lot. So, finished nails, for example, that stays in the house. That stays in the property when they're using it. So I pay for that. Plastic to cover the windows when they're spraying texture and paint, I don't pay for that because that doesn't stay in the house.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of where I decide to draw the line. So if they've got to increase their bid to cover that stuff, then they do that.
Okay.
But that's kind of how I work it.
Yeah. So tell me the importance that pricing plays in selling your properties and kind of maximizing profit.
Sure, pricing I think is a very important part of it. If you get greedy on the list pricing, it can backfire on you because your listing can get stale fairly quickly.
Right.
Kind of the way I look at it when I'm pricing property, if I don't have a contract on that in 3 weeks, I'm overpriced. Plain and simple. Also, the other thing to consider is the market will dictate your price. So if you're priced too low, the market is going to drive that up. So, and sometimes I will purposely price a product a little bit cheaper, and I'll see the market drive it up.
Yeah.
But if you're greedy on the top end of it and that gets stale out there, it just doesn't look good because now people are like, okay, what's wrong with it? Why hasn't it sold? And I'm okay with pushing the top end if the market's justifying it.
Right.
That being said, when I buy the property and figure out my after repair value, I'm using a conservative number I know I can sell that house at. If I know I can sell it at 145, but maybe I can get 160 for it, I'm not using 160 on the front end, I'm using that 145.
Right.
But if I can push on the back end, great. But, I think, again, you've got to look at your competition, what's out there. What do buyers have to choose from?
A lot of people don't really realize it. Even in that 3-month period or so that you're holding a house or a couple months, you need to run your comps again because things change quickly, right?
Exactly. And, another thing that, you can do fairly easily is, look at actives relative to solds, and are solds higher or lower than the actives?
Right.
That'll tell you what's going on in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that can give you some
days on market
intel,
as well, just to see kind of how fast are things turning. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, awesome. Yep. Well, any kind of, we're about out of time here, any kind of last minute tips you would give to folks to, that maybe haven't, if there's anybody listening that hasn't rehabbed or has done a couple deals, but they want to take it to another level, just kind of general advice you'd give them on how to ease into that and make sure that they're doing it the right way.
Sure. Do your own homework. If you're putting your money up on the line or someone else's, you've got to do your own homework. Don't trust anyone else, especially if they're in a sales position.
Yeah.
Not to bash agents, but you've got to do your own homework.
Absolutely.
And I would say, get a mentor. It'll just help bring you up on your learning curve so much quicker.
Yep. Awesome. Great advice. Hey, Brian,
okay.
Thanks so much for your time today. Appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And for folks that want to learn more about you, we'll add some links down below the video here. And please stay in touch, my friend.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Have a good day. Are you a member of FlipNerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit FlipNerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry, so get on over to FlipNerd.com.